Okay, good morning, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started with our elected officials meeting. Today's date is May 21, 2025. The time is 9:01 a.m. In attendance are Commissioners Eberline and Matari. I'm going to call this meeting to order. Are there any changes to the agenda? Hearing none. Public comment? Hearing none. We'll go right into our first item, insurance risk assessment. It's a discussion item, and I have John Getty here to talk about ICRIMP and insurance.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With me is Jeff Smith. Basically, I'm going to talk about two different things today. One, valuation, and secondly, walkthroughs. The ICRIMP program is based on replacement costs for building and contents and property in the open. That means new for old at the time of a loss. Mobile equipment and vehicles are actual cash value, so essentially it's like, kind, and quality at the time of the loss, taking into consideration age. There have been some instances where I've found that mobile equipment is actually worth more now used than it was when it was purchased, which seems kind of strange, but it happens. And there are a couple of websites that departments can look at mobile equipment, use mobile equipment for sale to determine really what the value of that equipment is. One of the issues we've had is departments moving from one building to another, and there's going to be more of that happening when the new building comes online. And Erica is trying to get numbers by department of valuation of content so we can get those departments in the right place at the right time. Erica basically works on costs, so when she's making an asset acquisition and getting it to me, she gives me that value. Again, it could go up or down from that number as far as replacement cost goes, but that's the one thing that we need to be sure that we're not short of. Leases and contracts and rental equipment oftentimes have insurance provisions in them. Cecilia is good at getting me requests for certificates of insurance, but sometimes those certificates don't necessarily follow the requirements of the leases or contracts. So I've asked that we get copies of those kind of documents, and your office, Commissioner, has started giving me copies of leases, which I appreciate. Erica did an analysis of our contents in ICRIMP, the schedules, and there are a number of items that she needed additional questions on, and we're trying to go back to the departments and get those questions answered so we'll know whether we've got potential holes or potential duplicates. This year, for the first year, ICRIMP quarterly is looking at total insurable values, and if those values go up by $5 million in a quarter, they're going to start charging additional premium. So that's something we need to get budgeted for when, again, the new building comes online. And I've asked them for a property rate. We have not got that yet. One of the suggestions I made, Sheriff, when I talked with your staff at the Kootenai North facility, was that they get an average cost for an office, for contents in an office, and then they could multiply that by the number of offices, which would get us a long ways towards determining replacement costs in that building. And then, of course, they'll have to go through the auto department and get those values as well, because the per office cost doesn't apply in those situations. We have, Jeff and I and Jeff Waller have started doing walkthroughs of buildings. We're pretty much done first time around. Again, we've been in Kootenai North a couple of times. And we're looking for contents issues, and we're also looking for life safety issues. We've been joined by Alicia from the State Insurance Fund on several of those walkthroughs, and she has great expertise in seeing things that are potential life safety issues. simple things like fire extinguishers being covered up by things, or breaker boxes, the same thing. Or fire extinguishers that are not current. I've not found any that are not current in my walkthroughs, but oftentimes that also happens. And I think, Jeff, unless you have something else to add, I would open it for any questions.
No, I just think that the communication's been really good. The walkthroughs have been a definite eye-opener, and we were able to find some stuff to make sure it got added to the schedule so there was no gaps or no surprises if there is a loss. But I think the biggest thing is to get the property rates for MyCrimp, the estimates, and then obviously what the new building is going to run us once it comes online.
Thank you. Any questions? No. Just as a sidebar here, I also would like to talk a little bit about liability, because one of the things that I think is important is that we're proactive and we look for areas where there may be liability within the county. And a good rule of thumb is any kind of activity that a person engages in where they could get injured. And, you know, because there's liability associated with that. So you want to talk a little bit about what we can do as a county, John, to try to identify potential liabilities that may not already be on the radar of our insurance carrier?
Thank you for the question. One of the things that ICRIMP has provided is a library of podcasts, if you will, that address various liability issues. We as agents don't have access to that, but I understand that they're very good informational pieces. That's a great first thought. The other item, I guess, is just for employees and elected officials to think what they're doing in a particular instance may have an impact on the county's insurance. And those liability situations, when liability claims are paid, have an impact on the premium that the county is paying, or it's even its eligibility for insurance.
Okay. Any questions at all?
Sure. Bob Norris. So, John, what is your area of responsibility, and are you an employee for ICRIMP or contract employee, or?
Sheriff, we're agents for ICRIMP, so we essentially represent the county to the company.
Okay.
So when Erica has updates, she sends them to me, and we're the people that do the input in those situations. We're not very involved in claims until it comes to the position that the public entity wants to appeal to the ICRIMP board, and I've been involved in a couple of those.
My problem with ICRIMP is that we'll receive a tort or lawsuit, and ICRIMP will make a determination of coverage without even contacting the said employee or confirm if any of the facts are correct inside that tort or lawsuit. So I know that the fiduciary responsibility is for the commissioners, but we're all stakeholders as elected officials here also. So whenever we have a tort claim or lawsuit, we would like to have some input, at least a thorough inquiry or investigation on why they are or not going to provide coverage.
And I can appreciate your position. And I would suggest that since Commissioner Duncan is on the ICRIMP board, that you could let her know your thoughts and she could relay them to management there. You certainly, anyone involved in a tort claim ought to have input on the front end.
I would agree, but we're seeing that there's no inquiry, consulting, interview, nothing. So.
Comment?
Go ahead, Mark.
Comment?
Yep, go ahead, Mark.
I wonder if that having a commissioner on the ICRIMP board wouldn't be a conflict of interest.
John, do you have any-
Commissioner, the ICRIP board is comprised of elected officials across the entire state. So I could understand if there was a potential conflict of interest that Commissioner Duncan might have to recuse herself from a vote. But I don't think that would preclude her from providing input to management.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
John, I'm just curious, with respect to discussions on valuation, on property, not necessarily real but personal, and liability, should the elected officials consult with you when it comes to any kind of changes or what's happening within their purview?
And Commissioner, I'd be happy to engage in those conversations, and I think Jeff would as well. It's not something that's happened in the past. I have dealt with departmental people more than I have with elected officials.
Yeah. The reason I ask is because typically when you have an agent type relationship, usually I would contact my agent, even though they weren't really an employee of the insurance company, to talk about my coverage, to talk about the situation, to make sure that I was properly covered in various scenarios. So would that still work well in this type of a situation?
And Commissioner, you described perfectly the role of an agent.
Okay, so we should try to encourage the electeds to contact you directly when there are something's changing, something is new, things like that.
And I'd be glad to provide my cell phone number and my email address. Cecilia has both of those, but I'd be glad to provide them.
I think when you take the position and engage an agent, being proactive instead of being reactive is always the best course.
Yeah, so for any kind of property or liability issues, personnel. Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, I would sure like to see our insurance carrier being proactive. I have not seen that as of yet, but if you could deliver that message to ICRIM, that would be great.
Yeah, well, I think it's going to be a combination of all of us being proactive with them as well. Just, I think one of the challenges for elected officials is that when you come into your position, you don't know what you don't know, right? So something could have been going on for many years that there was no discussion with ICRIM or yourself, John, about that activity. And then it's kind of discovered later after the fact. And so maybe there needs to be some sort of a system developed where, you know, we can be a little more proactive together to identify processes, activities, property, things like that, where everyone's operating on the same page.
And Commissioner, I point out that, and I won't name the entity, but I was driving around one day and saw a water tank that I didn't have on a schedule. It was a multi-million-dollar structure. And I pointed that out right away.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Actually, I have a question that just occurred to me. May I ask?
Sure. Tina, did you want to ask a question?
Yes, please. Would it improve our insurance rates if we had video cameras that could document events like the dumpster fire we had a few weeks ago that we still don't know if it was set on purpose or by accident?
Certainly that would help in pursuing the culprit and an investigation of the claim. Another thing, talking about video cameras, that would help from the standpoint of contents is if you videoed each office or each part of your building. If you had a structural fire that took down the building and you have to rely on your memory of what's in each office, it would be much more difficult without that backup.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Jeff. Real quick, one of the things I just want to mention here is that in attendance for elected officials are prosecuting attorney Stanley Mortensen and our sheriff, Bob Norris. So I hope that in the future we can try to get a little better attendance with our elected officials. And I hope at the very least that they watch this video because there's very important information, I think, for everyone to be aware of. With that said, we'll move on to item
Mark
2.
Everline online.
Oh, what, Mark?
No, that he's present. Just not
I'm here. I'm here.
Yeah, no. Well, I mentioned that you were in attendance on the telephone. I was referring to the other elected officials.
Okay.
Next up is item 2, reporting, staffing, and budgets. And really what this has to do with is something that I just want to remind folks that I know we're moving into budget season. We're going to be asking for, our needs and our wants. And when it comes to staffing, I think what's really important is that we can start to develop metrics so we can show not only just the commissioners, but the public at large, what your needs are and why. And so I just wanted to emphasize that if anyone wants to learn more about this and what we can do to develop good reporting, I would encourage folks to reach out to Craig Davidson in Community Development. He has already said that he'd be happy to make himself available. And as well, for myself, I would be happy to work with any elected official or department head who has especially personnel asks that we could start to develop these kind of metrics. So we could actually show people here, there's workload per employee, here's where the workload is, and it's going beyond our current staffing levels. And I think that would be an important component in the budgeting process. Does anyone have any questions or comments on that? No? Okay. Mark, any questions or comments?
Nope.
All right. Well, that concludes item 2. On to public comment. Hearing none. 9:18, meeting adjourned.